And welcome back to yet another episode of On the Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 27 today. I will be reviewing the Italian Grand Prix, looking ahead to the upcoming Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and also looking at a bit of news. As you may hear by who it is here, it is only myself, host Adrian Kita, bringing you another episode individually, as Ethan has got work commitments, so he's likely going to be back next week as we review the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But let's look back at well, it wasn't last week, it was a couple of weeks back now, the Italian Grand Prix, which did see Charles Leclerc win the race, but we will be talking about Charles Leclerc a little bit later on. So let's crack on and look at qualifying, with the top three in qualifying in Q1 of Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri, with the bottom five consisting of Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll, Franco Colapinto on his debut, Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, I don't think there's many surprises in the Q1 eliminations, probably Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda, with Alonso and Ricciardo doing relatively a little bit better, but the two out of the two Sauber cars continue to underperform, not show any signs of improvement really, kind of stuck there at the back of the grid. Franco Colapinto did well in practice, showed signs of relative knowledge of the Williams car. And he kind of showed what he was capable of, but realistically, it was just practice. And in qualifying, he was eliminated and started the race in 18th. And then Lance Stroll and Yuki Tsunoda, 17th and 16th. Both of those two drivers probably going to be disappointed. I mean, Lance Stroll arguably not, because he's the number 2 driver at Aston Martin, but Yuki Tsunoda definitely will be disappointed, as Daniel Ricciardo did qualify in P12, as we'll talk about it a little bit later on. But Yuki Tsunoda has generally outperformed Daniel Ricciardo, and I think Daniel Ricciardo has slowly been showing signs of improvement. Whether that will warrant a contract at Red Bull at this stage, I don't know. But he's definitely showing signs of improvement, and maybe showing signs of why he should stay in the sport. Whether he will get that Red Bull seat for 2025 if Sergio Perez is axed from the team, it is yet to be known still, but he's definitely making steps in the right direction to secure himself a seat within the elite for 2025. Moving on to Q2, the top three in that session was Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Lando Norris appearing in third rather than first in Q1, with the bottom five of the aforementioned Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso, should I say Alonso and Ricciardo, 11th and 12th. Magnussen in 13th, and then the two Alpines of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon in 14th and 15th. The two Alpines, I reckon they'll be happy with just progressing into Q2 once again. They've not had the best of times in 2024. They've had a bit of an up and down season, and it's just one of them races where it's okay. It's not great. It's not amazing. Don't get me wrong. But for where their car's at currently, I think it's doing a good enough job. Kevin Magnussen in 13th. He's usually knocked out in Q1 in some occasions, but he was able to get himself into Q2. But I think he will be a little bit disappointed knowing that his teammate in Nico Hulkenberg qualified into Q3 in a similar car. Whether upgrades have been put onto Hulkenberg's car and not Magnussen's car, we don't know. Whether setups are different for the two drivers, we don't know that as well. But Nico Hulkenberg clearly showing why he's the new Mr. Saturday, and George Russell, obviously in the Mercedes, isn't called that anymore, because he was Mr. Saturday during his Williams days, but he's not called that anymore. And then the aforementioned Daniel Ricciardo and Fernando Alonso, I reckon those two drivers will be happy to be in the higher reaches of Q2, knocking on the door of Q3. Fernando Alonso probably won't be happy seeing the likes of Alex Albon and Nico Hulkenberg pipping to get into Q3. But to start in 11th place is probably a good marker to get yourself some points. Moving on to Q3, and it was actually the two McLaren drivers of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri that locked out the front row for the Italian Grand Prix. Lando Norris qualifying well again. We obviously saw what happened in the race, and it didn't go to fruition for him. But yet again, McLaren show their strong sides, and they're ready to fight and to pounce on any given opportunity, and they did so in Monza. Oscar Piastri in second. I think he's a driver that's begging, that's wanting to get that pole position, but he's so cruelly denied once again by his teammate. George Russell made a shock kind of jump up to P3 at the latter stages of the qualifying session, pipping the two Ferraris to obviously the second row as Charles Leclerc lined up alongside the Brit in fourth, with Carlos Sainz joining Lewis Hamilton on row 3 in fifth, Hamilton in sixth, with Verstappen and Perez making up row 4 in seventh and eighth, and Alexander Albon and Nico Hulkenberg rounding off the top 10 in ninth and 10th. Moving on to let's say the 1 to 10 rating, it's obviously dominated largely by Charles Leclerc, who did take that victory in front of the Tifosi fans to send them absolutely balmy. The scenes that happened at Monza with all the fans storming onto the track were tremendous. Were really, really tremendous to see. But let's begin with our race winner, Charles Leclerc. He qualified in P4. But with a one-stop strategy, he made it work and he stuck it out to finish first, making up 3 places from his starting position. So Ethan has sent in his 1 to 10s, and for Leclerc, similarly to myself, he gave Leclerc a 10 out of 10, and it is a 10 out of 10 undoubtedly because the man has made a one-stop strategy work out the blue where it seemed impossible to make it work, and to make up the places that he did, especially when the two McLarens squabbled, were imperative for Leclerc to get that victory. And obviously Piastri was on the quicker tyre at the end of the race, and so was Lando Norris, that they just wasn't able to catch the flying Monegasque driver who brought home his second race victory at Monza 5 years apart, but to get his second race victory in front of a Tifosi. And it was vital, I think, for Ferrari to get this victory because McLaren are slowly crawling away from them in the Constructors' Championship. Whether that's brought them back into the fray a little bit, it might have, because we saw Verstappen and Perez not finish the race relatively well. So that victory in Monza was tremendous for Ferrari, for Leclerc, in their respective championship battles, and it kind of puts Ferrari in the battle for the top dog, the top seat, number 1, P1 in the constructors championship. That's for sure. Moving on to Oscar Piastri, who qualified in P2 and finished the race in P2. He obviously made that overtake on his teammate to gain the race lead on the first lap, which was very naughty. They, as it was said on comms, they were racing papaya rules. So whether the overtake was fair on all accounts, it's not known. But from what McLaren are saying, it was fair racing, and whether they're maybe prioritizing Oscar Piastri more now, I don't know. But myself and Ethan gave Oscar Piastri 9 out of 10, and it is justifiable because, don't get me wrong, the lad has made a fantastic move to gain the race lead, but with the two-stop strategy, he was always going to be chasing when Leclerc was put on that one-stop strategy. Well, it was said on the radio for Leclerc, do the opposite to McLaren, and it was exactly deployed. And whenever you get that time advantage, All Leclerc needed to do was keep it out of the gravel, race clean, and get it over the line, and he did exactly that with I think 2.6 seconds spare over Oscar Piastri. So a deserved 9 out of 10. But I think the race win kind of slipped away from him. But moving on to Lando Norris, who qualified in pole position, as we said, and finished the race in P2, losing 2 places. I gave him an 8 out of 10, and Ethan gave him a 7 out of 10. Ethan's probably gave him a 7 out of 10 purely on the basis that Lando Norris has now the same percentage conversion from pole position into race victories. And it's the good old debate whether McLaren are actually giving Oscar Piastri preferential treatment purely because he gained the race lead on the opening lap. But it's speculated that Lando Norris is in a championship battle with. I say speculated. It's said that Lando Norris is in a championship battle with Max Verstappen. He's gained a couple of points on Max Verstappen, but could he do it, or could Oscar Piastri actually mount a challenge from out the blue? It's yet to be known, but I think McLaren should be really concentrating on their Constructors' Championship hopes if they are to actually clinch the Constructors' Championship, because at the moment there's no harmony, there's no teamwork. It just looks like a bunch of individuals. And Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, I don't think, are working as a team. They're working more as individuals. And they both arguably are future world champions, but are they sacrificing a Constructors' Championship for McLaren just for personal gain and them to come close in the World Championship? Might be that. Let's move on to Carlos Sainz, who finished P4, started from P5, gaining 1 place from the start. Both of us gave him an 8 out of 10, and it is justifiable because he did some good defensive work to kind of stop the charging McLarens at one point. And I don't think he could have asked for more. He fended off Lewis Hamilton for a long time. And I don't think a podium was on the cards for Carlos Sainz. Um, but that goes without saying. He did a fantastic job defending. He did a fantastic job helping his teammate gain the victory of the race, and he's just an all-round good egg for obviously his teamwork and his defending abilities to stop the McLarens charging onto Charles Leclerc earlier. So an 8 out of 10 from the two of us. On to Lewis Hamilton, who qualified in P6 and finished in P5, gaining 1 position. Once again, it's a straightforward 8 out of 10. I think that obviously Lewis Hamilton probably was expecting a lot more, with Monza being a good track for him. But it's a good race finish. It's a top 5 race finish. It's not the race finish that he would have hoped for, especially with the victories that he's had in the past couple of races. But it's another good points haul for Mercedes. Whether they're still in the battle for the P1 and the Constructors' Championship, that's probably dead and buried. But they'll arguably finish in P4 in the Constructors' Championship, and as many points as they can get possible is a good enough return for them. On to Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, who qualified in P7 and finished in P6, gaining 1 place. We both gave him a 7 out of 10. It's a good race for Max, but with his standards, especially with the Max Verstappen effect, it's hard to give him anything higher than a 7, purely on the basis that the car is seeming to go backwards, and I don't think the car is performing at the level it was at the start of the season. Whether upgrades are expected on my car, we don't know. But that's one thing that Verstappen will be hoping for. Upgrades will be put on the car, and he can have a bit of a boost in energy for the last couple of races of this season to keep his championship crown once again. On to George Russell, who obviously had that crash at the start of a race, which kind of hampered him a little bit. He qualified in P3 and finished in P7. Ethan gave him a 6 out of 10, and I gave him a 5 out of 10 because I gave him a 5 out of 10 purely on the basis that you should be realistically keeping out of lap one incidents, and George Russell came a cropper of that. It's unlucky. It's only a racing incident with I can't remember who it was actually. But he came together with one of the drivers into turn one. Uh, I believe it was Hulkenberg. It might have been Hulkenberg that he came together with. And then he had to have his front wing. If he had to have a front wing change when he had his tire stop. So all in all, it's a bit of a average performance for George Russell, but one that he could probably come back from. On to Sergio Perez, who, yeah, again, it's a bit of a drab performance. He qualified in P8 and finished in P8. I went for a drab 6 out of 10. Ethan went for a 7, and it's one of them performances where the Red Bull seemingly is not going anywhere, and Sergio Perez has finally realized. Well, Max Verstappen has finally realized what Sergio Perez has been feeling all this time, that the car is nowhere to be seen. It's in no man's land, and it seriously needs something drastic to change for their fortunes to go in an upward trajectory. Onto Alexander Albon, who Ethan gave a 9 out of 10, and I gave a 9 out of 10. It's fantastic qualifying. He qualified in P9 and finished in P9. Fantastic qualifying mixed in with a fantastic race. Yeah, it goes without saying that Alex Albon is finally, I think he's finally hit the ground running, and he's finally doing what he needs to do best, and it's to score as many points as possible for the Williams team, because Franco Colapinto, as good as he did in his opening race, I don't think he's going to be scoring many points for the last few races after he obviously replaced Logan Sargent. But I think the quicker that Franco Colapinto hits the ground running, maybe he will score a points finish here and there. But I think Monza was the best chance for him to score points because of the high downforce, the high speeds, should I say, that the Williams possess, which I think Alex Albon kind of utilized very well in this race, and he got himself another points finish. Kevin Magnussen rounds off the points. He qualified in P13 and finished in P10, and the two of us gave him a 9 out of 10. Yet again, I think Nico Hulkenberg is usually the one that scores the points at Haas. And for Kevin Magnussen to show his great abilities, obviously he did get a few penalties here and there. Got himself a race ban, which we'll talk about in the news section. But to get a points finisher for a Haas team, which has been in dire need of points in the last couple of races, is pivotal, and it's vital for them to finish with as many points as possible, especially beating the likes of VCarb and Alpine, fending off those guys. It's imperative for the Haas team to get as many points finishes as possible. On to Fernando Alonso, who qualified in P11 and finished in P11, 6 out of 10. Average performance, especially when you're knocking on the door of Q3. Fernando Alonso, with his standards, you are expecting him to finish in the top 10 if he's starting P11, but he wasn't able to do so. On to Franco Colapinto, who qualified in P18, finished the race in P12, gaining 6 places. The two of us gave him a 9 out of 10. It's not a perfect debut, don't get me wrong, he's not in the points, but it's a performance of where you're making places, you're making ground, you're getting the experience, you're getting the feel of a car on such an iconic track as well. And he was able to get himself a very good finish. It's not Nick De Vries' points finish in Williams a couple of seasons back, but I think the less said about Nick De Vries, the better, because I mean, Franco Colapinto finished P12, and I don't think the man was expected to finish anywhere near there, especially qualifying in P18. So it's It's a very, very good finish for him. So 9 out of 10 from both of us. Daniel Ricciardo qualified P12, finished P13, 6 out of 10. Very average performance. Can't really remember much of Daniel Ricciardo. Similarly goes to Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, and Valtteri Bottas, who finished 14th, 15th, and 16th. Both of them getting a 6 out of 10. A 6 out of 10 from me. And a 5 out of 10 for Ocon, a 5 out of 10 for Gasly, and a 6 out of 10 for Bottas. Nico Hulkenberg is next, who finished 17th. He gets a 3 out of 10 from the two of us. Just very poor. Just also lap one incident which hampered him. He qualified in the top 10 and he wasn't able to convert it. Luckily for him, his teammate was able to do so. Guan Yu Zhou qualified in P20 and finished in P18, getting 2 places. 4 out of 10 from the two of us. Can't remember much really of him. Lance Stroll qualified in P17 and finished in P19. A 3 out of 10 from me and a 4 out of 10 from Ethan. Yet again, I think Aston Martin Lance Stroll, more importantly, is crying for anything that can help him. Maybe Adrian Newey, who we'll speak about later on. Hopefully that will help him. And then Yuki Tsunoda, for me, obviously did not finish. He had to retire very, very early on. So the two of us have gone down the middle and gone 5 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. That rounds off our little section on our average ratings. Let's look back on our driver predictions. So for Ethan, his 2-star predictions was a Ferrari DNF and Alpine points. None of those happened. And for me, I predicted VCOB points, which I was hoping Daniel Ricciardo would deliver, but he didn't. And I predicted a Ferrari win, which I did put a massive tick next to. For qualifying, Ethan correctly predicted Lando Norris to qualify on pole position and George Russell to qualify in P3. He also noted down Lewis Hamilton to qualify second, Verstappen in fourth, and Piastri in fifth. He was able to get Oscar Piastri in the top 5, but not in second. It was actually the order was Norris, Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, and Sainz. So for me, qualifying, I predicted Norris correctly, and I predicted Sainz in fifth, but I predicted Leclerc, Verstappen, and Piastri second, third, and fourth, which didn't come to fruition. And in the race, Ethan managed to get a big fat 0 as he predicted Hamilton, Verstappen, Russell, Norris, and Piastri as his top 5. Matter of fact, I actually managed to get 4 of the top 5 correct, with Leclerc, Norris, Sainz, and Hamilton in first, third, fourth, and fifth. I just wasn't able to predict Oscar Piastri in second, and I put down Max Verstappen. Let's look at our little Formula 2 and Formula 3 corner. So in the Formula 2 and Formula 3, the big talking point from Formula 2 was Gabriel Bortoleto, but we'll talk about Gabriel Bortoleto a little bit later on. We'll talk about our good friend Leonardo Fornaroli, who was able to win the race on literally the last lap of the race. He was able to make that move stick, and he was able to finish on the top step of the driver standings, 23 points clear of Gabriele Maini. But let's recap from the beginning. Let's recap from qualifying and look onto the sprint races and the feature race. So in qualifying, it was actually championship leader Leonardo Fornaroli that qualified on pole position, with Alex Dunn, championship battler Gabriele Maini in third, Sami Megatunov in fourth, Santiago Ramos and Sebastian Montoya in fifth and sixth, Joshua Dufek for AIX Racing in seventh, Christian Mansell, who was also in the mix, in eighth, Mari Boyer, Dino Beganovic rounding off the top 10. In 11th place, it was Tsanopol Ifrapusak in AIX, sorry for butchering the surname. In 12th place, starting on reverse grid pole for the sprint race, it was Tim Tramnitz for MP Motorsport. In the sprint race, it was Tim Tramnitz that managed to convert pole position into a race victory. Second place was Sebastian Montoya, with third place Santiago Ramos. Fourth, Alex Dunn. Fifth, Dino Beganovic. Sixth, Sami Megatunov. Seventh, Luke Browning. Eighth, Murray Boyer. Leonardo Fornaroli in ninth, and Gabriele Mani in 10th. But due to some penalties following the sprint race, Sebastian Montoya was judged to have forced Santiago Ramos off the track during their fight for the podium places, which saw him receive a 5-second penalty, dropping him down to 11th place. This promoted Santiago Ramos up to second and Alex Dunn into third. So it was actually Sebastian Montoya dropped out of the points. Santiago Ramos moved up to second with Alex Dunn in third. And then everybody else just moved up one place. So Dino Beganovic was fourth, Sami Megatunov fifth, Luke Browning sixth, Murray Boyer seventh, Leonardo Fornaroli eighth, Gabriele Mani ninth. So in the feature race, it was Sami Megatunov who beat his trident teammate Leonardo Fornaroli to the race victory, but Leonardo Fornaroli was able to make that last gap pass on Christian Mansell to give him the win, the championship win in Formula 3. Like I mentioned, Christian Mansell finished on the final podium place with Alex Dunn in fourth, Martinez Stenhorst in fifth, Tim Tramnitz in sixth, Noel Leon in seventh, Lawrence Van Hoopen in eighth, Dino Beganovic in ninth, and Joshua Dufek in 10th. Which, as I mentioned already, it propelled Leonardo Fornaroli to the championship crown in Formula 3. Gabriele Mani hung on to P2 in the championship after he gained 2 points in the Monza sprint race. Luke Browning came third. Arvid Lindblad, pointless in his last 3 races, but still managed to beat off Christian Mansell to finish fourth. The aforementioned Mansell finished fifth, Beganovic in sixth, Goethe in seventh, Megatunov in eighth, Tramnitz in ninth, and Leon in 10th. Moving on to Formula 2 now. There was a lot of action in Formula 2 purely because of a certain Gabriel Bortoleto, who, unorthodox to him, started very, very poorly in qualifying, ran wide when it mattered, and started from the back of the grid in both races. But he was able to make it into the points in all of the races. So in qualifying, let's begin with qualifying. The qualifying saw Zane Maloney take pole position for the feature race. Isaac Hadjar, championship leader in P2. Paul Aaron, championship contender in P3. Dennis Hauger for MP Motorsport in 4th. Victor Martins, who's had a good resurgence in recent weeks, qualified in P5. Kimi Antonelli in 6th. Josep Maria Marti in 7th. Oliver Behrman, who's also had a resurgence, qualified 8th. And Omari Cordial and Enzo Fittipaldi rounded off the top 10. In the feature race, it was Oliver Behrman who fought back tremendously, I'd say. Started 8th, launched himself like a rocket ship, and was able to gain another sprint race victory, taking 10 points for finishing first. Victor Martins took 9 points after he finished second and got the fastest lap. Joshua Dirksen finished in third, taking another podium for AIX. Josep Maria Marti finished 4th with Zane Maloney, Jack Crawford, Enzo Fittipaldi, and Gabriel Bortoleto rounding off the points places. And in the feature race, it was Zane Maloney that started on pole position, but he wasn't able to convert it as Gabriel Bortoleto made an absolute bold strategy called work, and he won the race, gaining 25 points, with Zane Maloney in second and Richard Verschoor running off the podium places. Kimi Antonelli finished in 4th. Joshua Dirksen in his rocket ship finished 5th, taking 11 points after he took one extra point for the fastest lap. Victor Martins finished 6th. Oliver Behrman in 7th. Rafael Villagomez in 8th. Jack Crawford in 9th. And Enzo Fittipaldi in 10th. In the driver's standings, because Gabriel Bortoleto and Dennis Hauger in the sprint race finished at exactly the same point. They got given half points. So this is the current affair in the driver standings. Isaac Hadjar is on 165 points in the lead. Gabriel Bortoleto, 154.5 points. He's in P2. Zane Maloney on 135, gaining one place on Paul Aaron, who drops down to fourth on 124. Jack Crawford keeps his place in the top five on 105. Kimi Antonelli jumps up one place, up to sixth, ahead of Franco Colapinto, who won't race in the championship anymore because of his Williams commitments. Dennis Hauger moved up to 83.5 points. Victor Martins moved up one place up to ninth on 74 points. And Kushmani dropped to 10th on 74 points. So the breaking news from Formula 3 is that 2024 F3 champion Leonardo Fornarelli will join Invicta Racing. Likely probably joining Kushmani. I believe Gabriel Bortoleto will be in the hunt for the championship crown. So whether he joins Kushmani or whether he joins Gabriel Bortoleto, because let's not forget Gabriel Bortoleto is a rookie. So they could be pairing up at Invicta Racing. It is yet to be known. Also, another bit of news that happened from the paddock is that Ollie Behrman will not be racing for Prema. He'll be racing at Haas as he replaces Kevin Magnussen, who is suspended. Also, Kimi Antonelli moves up to F1 with Oliver Behrman, who will be joining Haas full time. Kimi Antonelli joining Mercedes full time in 2025. Christian Mansell will be stepping into Trident with Roman Stanek's contract expiring. Therefore, the Formula 3 third place driver will be stepping into Formula 2 for the rest of the season at Trident. Arvid Lindblad will also be stepping into Formula 2. He's going to be stepping into Campos. Which is very, very interesting. He's graduated from Formula 3 at 17 years of age to join up the Formula 2 grid as a newly announced Campos driver. Also in the news, Luke Browning joins ART in the number 2 car until the end of the season. Luke Browning obviously making the step up from Formula 3, where he had a very, very successful season. Also in the news, who's stepping into... Oh, it was Gabriella Miney. Sorry. Okay, this episode will need a bit of cutting out. Also in the news, in Formula 2, Gabriella Miney will be stepping into Prema to fill in the place of Oliver Behrman, who will be fulfilling his Formula 1 duties as he replaces Kevin Magnussen. So Gabriella Miney will have a round in Azerbaijan in Formula 2 as a Prema driver, but it will just be for that round. That's it for the news. That's it for Formula 2. That's it for Formula 3. Let's look ahead at our predictions ahead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So my 2-star predictions are Oliver Behrman Q2. He had a very, very good qualifying in Saudi Arabia, and I'm hoping he will be able to replicate that. And I will also predicted a Ferrari podium. For Ethan's 2-star predictions, he's gone for 3+ DNFs, with obviously the twisty nature of Azerbaijan being a massive factor. And he's also gone for a Leclerc podium. So similarly to me, he's gone with a Ferrari podium. In qualifying, I've gone with Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, and Carlos Sainz as my top 5. With Ethan going Leclerc, Norris, Piastri as the top 3, Sainz and Russell 4th and 5th. Clear omission of Max Verstappen from there. He's clearly thinking that Max Verstappen's days in the top 5 are over very, very quickly. And in the race, I've gone with a Lando Norris victory, Charles Leclerc in 2nd, and Max Verstappen in 3rd. And I've gone with Piastri and Russell to round off my top five. For Ethan's top five, he's actually gone with a Piastri win, a Leclerc second place, and a Norris in third, with Hamilton and Russell rounding off the top five. I believe that's all the news for today. I think all bases are covered ahead of the upcoming Azerbaijan Grand Prix. We've reviewed the Italian Grand Prix. We've had a bit of a look at the news. We've had a look at the F3 champion Leonardo Fornaroli, who's graduating into Formula 2 next season. We've had a look at Formula 2, the changes that will be happening there. And we've, like I said, we've previewed the Azerbaijan Grand Prix also. So thank you for listening. I've been your host, Adrian Kita. I'll be back next week, hopefully with Ethan, as we review the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. In the meantime, hopefully you enjoy the content. Keep on listening, keep on streaming. Until next week, it's a goodbye from me, and we'll see you very, very soon.